Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tastemakers. And this is, of course, the podcast where we taste things. And luckily, I'm not sick this week, so I can taste things better. Yeah, that's how we do it. The things that we're tasting, of course, TV and film. We're talking about the latest releases on TV and in the movies, and talking about what's good, what's bad, what's worth checking out, what's not. With me, as always, is Grace. How you doing, Grace?
I'm doing well. I've eaten a lot this week as well too. I've tasted a lot of things. I'm ready to make them. I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense, Taran, but I'll talk about television with you.
Yeah, I don't know either. I said I'm not sick anymore. I'm actually still a tiny bit sick.
It happens.
But usually what that means is, oh, I'm sick. I probably watched a lot of stuff. No, I played Demon Souls.
Oh, nice. We haven't really done a much video game chatting. I don't think, but
I don't have a lot of time for it, but when I'm sick, that's the time, I think. I did watch some stuff, of course, but I also spent most of the week playing Demon Souls for the first time. So that was good. I beat it.
great,
So now it's done. Now
great.
I've already played Dark Souls 1 and 2. Now I need to do 3 and
Uh-huh.
Sekiro and Bloodborne and then the Elden Ring DLC, and then I'll really be soulsed out.
Right. My thing is I do play a lot of video games, but I play a lot of stuff that I can also be doing something else. So
Yeah,
I
that's the
play a
thing.
lot of simulation games. The one I've been hooked on, Turn. Have you heard of, I think it's I've never said this word out
Balatro
loud. Yeah,
or
but
Balatro.
Balatro. Yeah, loving it. Easy to
I've heard
play.
it's great.
Yeah.
It's one of those things I'm like I'm gonna get to it, and probably what I should do and what I probably will do is I'm gonna wait until I have a flight, and then I'm gonna download it and I'm gonna like spend the whole flight playing it probably.
I feel like the best thing. So if you haven't, Balatro is basically like a poker game where you're just basically trying to. It's a poker game and a deck building game, and you're basically trying to build. You want to you draw from your hand, and then you play poker hands. But you can then like upgrade your cards, and you can score more points, and you go on these runs, and it's really addicting. It's also the type of addicting that is perfect because while you're playing it, it's so fun, and then when you lose and you have to start over from scratch, you're like, I don't think I'm gonna do that again. I don't think I'm gonna start at the basic thing, which is a regular deck of cards. So you don't play it. It's like the perfect balance of like being very fun and addicting because you want to beat it, but then also like it's annoying when you lose and you don't just play it forever and ever. That's
That's
my
not what
thing
I've
about.
heard. I've heard people play it forever, but that's fine.
Yeah, but you don't have. It's very annoying when you lose. It's so annoying when you lose.
Okay.
So yeah, because you start from
All
scratch.
right.
You lose all of your good. You lose all of your good cards. So
You have no progress whatsoever? There's
you
nothing
can
that carries
you
over?
can you can upgrade your starter deck, which then gives you
Okay.
different. It gives you just kind of, but mostly you start from scratch. Yeah. Unless
Well,
I'm just so bad at the game that I have not figured out how to continue my
that is one of the
progress.
hot new games, Balatro. If we want to talk a little bit about video games, not that we really know much, of course. I think Astro Boy or something
Astro.
won in the Game Awards for Best Game of the Year or whatever, which I remember playing as a demo for the PlayStation, but they made a full game of it. It's apparently very good.
We should bring in a
Balatro is
video
also
game
in the
person
mix.
at some point, and then we'll do a video game. We'll give our tasting of video games. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to be a bigger gamer, I would say, but even then I was never like the biggest. And I've played a lot of games, but I'm not caught up on the latest. As you can tell, I just played Demon Souls for the first time. So,
Mm.
um, anyway, let's talk about some news headlines from TV and film because there's one that really jumped out to me,
Okay.
which I'm very excited about. I feel like there's been a flurry of news in the last like year about this project that it's all just happening so fast, and that is 28 years later.
Oh yeah.
Dropped a trailer. It's coming in 2025. Of course, this is Danny Boyle. 28 Days Later was the original. Funny story about 28 Days Later. It's a horror zombie movie. Popularized the fast zombies
Yeah.
in
Right.
modern sort of zombie movies. There was often the debate about are the fast zombies real zombies. They're actually it's a rage virus. They're not actually
Mhm.
dead. So
Mhm.
there's all sorts of stuff there. I watched 28 Days Later as a wee child because I rented. We did this back in the day. I rented a physical DVD. It might have been a VHS, and from a rental store, and they gave me the wrong thing.
Oh
I
wow.
was a child,
Wow.
and I popped in a video that I thought was probably like a Disney movie, and
Wow.
starts playing
Yeah.
28 Days
Yeah.
Later,
Wow.
and probably kicked off my love of horror.
Yeah.
So 28 years later, it's not been 28 years, but it is coming soon. And they dropped a trailer for it. I just saw the second most watched horror trailer ever. And in response to that, Sony has said, "Oh yeah, we'll finally actually put 28 Days Later on streaming for you because that's been very difficult for people to watch in the past." So that's fun.
I saw the trailer. I didn't know this was a thing, and I saw the trailer before I was watching a movie I went to this weekend, and got very excited. It looks so good. Did you know that this whole movie shot on iPhones? Did you know that?
That's a very Danny Boyle thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's also shot back to back with another movie. So there's
There,
two
yes,
28 years later coming.
there's actually it's a trilogy, I believe.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Well, whatever. That's fine.
yes. So
And
here's
that one,
here
the
just
sequel's not directed by Danny Boyle. The sequel's directed by
yeah.
Nia DaCosta. So yeah.
Yes. So here just to give a little bit of if people don't know, 28 Days Later, written by Alex Garland, I believe that one
Yeah,
was.
Civil War.
Um,
Yeah,
who went on to do Civil War, Ex Machina,
yeah,
Men, Devs.
yeah.
So he's kind of come into his own career as a director, but he started off as a writer and he
He's
often
gone
wrote
back
for
to
Danny
writing though.
Boyle.
He's gone back.
And now he has gone back to writing. He also wrote Sunshine, which is one of my favorite movies. So Alex Garland wrote 28 Days Later, and Danny Boyle directed. Danny Boyle, of course, won an Oscar for Slumdog Millionaire and has directed many, many movies. One of my favorite directors. Classic horror movie. There was a sequel made 28 weeks later. It was made a couple of years later, a couple of years after the 20 Days Later, not directed by Danny Boyle or written by Alex Garland. It was also, I thought, pretty good. I liked it at the time. Famously, the opening scene is the best scene in the movie, rumored to have been directed by Danny Boyle. He was like on set and helped direct that scene, which is a thing that you will hear about anytime anybody mentions the movie. That movie, I believe, 28 weeks later, not canon in the movies. So I believe 28 years later is a sequel to 28 Days Later, and it's going to be a trilogy now. So a little bit confusing, but that's what I was. Either way, if you haven't seen any of these movies and you like horror movies, I would recommend seeing both movies anyway, 28 Days and 28 Weeks, in preparation for the sequels. But either way, I'm excited for them. I'm happy.
The cast is great. Jodie Comer, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Ray Fiennes. It's very, very fun. So excited for this one. Looks to be a middle of next year, June movie.
Also, I would say probably the breakout role for Cillian Murphy. Maybe not the breakout role, but like probably a role that put him on the map for English, not English. He was obviously Irish.
I know what you mean, yeah.
But for American audiences who really liked 28 Days Later.
Let me ask you a question. There's a thing in the trailer.
Yep.
What do you think about this? And I can't say, I don't want to say more than that, but I could, but I feel like
there was a little bit of hubbub that there was a character in the trailer that was hard to distinguish, and people thought, oh, is this person, this character, this actor, and because it looks like it could be, and I believe that there was actually an extra that came out that was like, no, that's me actually, not that person.
Okay, all right, I didn't see that part, so interesting. Okay, fun. I mean, if you, I'm of two worlds, because on one, it's like trailers are not going to not happen. Like never like they have to market their movies, but also, I do feel like there's this trend of spoiling it, but then also, can you figure out a way to make that work to your advantage? It's all very interesting.
It's a good trailer, and I am not like the biggest trailer watcher, as I've mentioned before. Occasionally, I will. I was seeing people say this was a good one. It wasn't really spoiling much. There was a little bit of worry that it might have been, but I don't think it is. So I think it's totally worth checking the trailer. It's just like a fun little piece of media, to be honest.
Yeah.
All right. Elsewhere, two shows that we have been talking about recently have just been renewed. Man on the Inside was just renewed for a second season, and importantly, a second season, I believe, set to air in 2025.
Yeah, he announced it. Michael Schur said that it will air next year, so will be a quick turnaround, which makes sense as an 8-episode comedy. He's used to a production schedule that would have kept him. Michael Schur is with The Good Place and Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And everything else he's done, that he can keep on this schedule. So you would think that they would just start shooting pretty quickly, and that you could imagine that it will be end of 2025, but yeah, probably around the same time. This is a
I
good
have
string of.
been
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I have been watching. I'm nearly done with the season. I will say it did get better for me. I am enjoying A Man on the Inside a bit more than I did initially. So I'm happy for a second season. It's kind of just a cozy little show, and I'm enjoying it. So I'm happy for another season, especially soon.
Yeah, I think that this show does the thing that Michael Schur does really well, which is that he can take like kind of like a silly premise, and this is based on a true story. This is was a documentary from 2020.
Oh,
Yeah, I think Spanish. It happened in Spain. Different
that
premise.
makes me
He
so curious.
Different premise. The woman thought that his dad was, or his mom, I think, was being abused in a home, rather than there being, the stealing of jewels, which is the impetus for A Man on the Inside. But
It's a bit dark.
yeah, darker for sure. I think that Michael Schur does this thing really well, where he takes kind of a silly premise and sort of silly characters, and then he just makes you really care and invest about them. This is ultimately a show about dealing with grief, and that's, to me, the main theme that I see through it. And so I think it's really charming and cozy, and it's kind of like, dealing with an issue that then, like, the solution is like, love your family. It's good. I like it. I'm glad it's renewed, sort of in a string of successful comedies for Netflix. I think with Nobody Wants Us getting renewed pretty quickly,
Mhm.
and then also No Good Deed came out this past week. I watched a bit
Mhm.
of that. No renewal news on that, but I feel like this could be an avenue. I've said for a little while that I'm surprised there isn't sort of in the vein of sort of Comedy Central, and those are that, like, think about all the comedies that place used to churn out, like shows like Workaholics, that have just kind of like not really found a place to sit. And I'm a
Mm.
little bit like, "Nah, I don't really know it needs to be Netflix." I think this is different too. I'm surprised there isn't like a Shudder version of comedy, and if there is, somebody tell me. I think the closest I have is like Dropout, but that doesn't feel the same. That's a lot of like improv, game showy type stuff. I feel like there's a market for that, but I don't know where it is.
I'd be curious. Like there aren't a lot of like comedy genre. Like there's comedy fans, but they're often like fans of comedians, I would say,
Yeah,
in my
that's true.
experience.
That's
There's
true.
not a lot of like I'm a hardcore like comedy fan of like 30 to 60-minute or 30-minute comedies or like comedy movie. Like I'm deep into like the fandom of that. Like I don't know if there's like a huge audience for it. Obviously, the idea of like a comedy film, like mid-budget comedy film has like really deteriorated over the last like 5 to 10 years. And Netflix like streaming is kind of the place for those now. Um, and so obviously, the biggest hits on Netflix and places like this had, especially in the early days, were things like The Office,
Right.
and Friends, and like all of these things, right? And so it does not surprise me that they are still kind of trying to make more of those themselves,
Yeah.
because I do think it's a fun thing to just kind of throw on. What I will say is, especially with the renewal of a season two, I would like definitely officially recommend, yeah, just check out Man on the Inside. I think it's
I
a
agree.
fun little watch. It's not very much of a commitment, and you know that there's going to be more later. So I think it's worth checking out.
I think you'd know immediately too if it's your vibe or not. Like if you're
Yep.
like not
Yep.
vibing with it, you're okay to like leave it. If you think it's not going to be the most amazing thing. I've been doing the tallying of the year-end poll, Taran, and I think there's a little bit of like saw some so there's been some because there's a question about what's the worst show of the year, and there's a little bit of these, like occasionally someone's like, "Oh my god, stop talking about how good this show is." Like they're like, "It's not actually good." English Teacher is one that a couple people were like, "It's not as good as they're saying it is." Which I think my response to that is like, no, I know it's not like I think English Teacher is very good actually, but like I know
It's
Man on
one
the
of the
Inside
yeah.
is not like the most amazing show that's ever been created. But if you're looking for a way to spend like 30 minutes, pop on an episode of Man on the Inside.
Yeah, English Teacher was, I think, a show that like benefits from low expectations, and if you start to feel like it's going to be like great, then yeah, you're going to probably be disappointed. But
Shrinking was the other
um,
one that there was a lot of flack for of
that's
people
one
not
that kind
loving
of caught me.
Shrinking.
Like Shrinking just never
Yeah,
worked for me.
yeah.
Maybe I'll go back to it someday. The other show that was renewed, Silo, has been
Yeah.
renewed for 2 more seasons, meaning it's going to get its full 4-season run, where it will end in season 4. Hopefully, this also means that they'll be able to speed up the production
Oh
process a
yeah,
little bit.
please.
So
Oh
that would be nice, especially for a show
yeah.
like Silo, where like the lore, I imagine, will continue to get more and more complicated in later seasons. Like if the gap between season 3 and season 4 is like 2 years, that's a lot of gap for like, wait, what is all of the stuff that I'm supposed to remember about this show? Like you
Yeah.
really got to speed that up, I think.
My thing, the surprise here is that I think that they probably could have done more of the show. I know that there's only 3 books, but they split the first 2 books up into 2 seasons, and I think that has been kind of mostly a bad choice. I think that
Mhm.
they're in there's the issue is that there's probably more than enough content for more than 1 season out of the first book, but I don't think it fits 2 full seasons. Kind of like 1.5, and I feel like being more like splitting up that a little bit. I have not read books 2 and 3, so I don't know if you could have done that. That has been my thing so far. It is really interesting to me that they like put an end on it. This is a theme we've seen last while. The Boys did this. I feel like there's
Mhm.
another example that was like, we're doing 2 more and then that's it. Obviously Stranger Things, probably like, the biggest example of like both saying how much they're going to do and also being in a catastrophic mess about how to get that done in a timely fashion. But I kind of think that it's helpful for a show to set a confirmed end date on
I
it
really, yeah, I agree.
more than I think it hinders them at all. So I think it's a
I mean,
good thing.
like I said, for Man on the Inside, I'm like, if it was just 1 season for sure, I'd be like, yeah, take it or leave it. The fact that it's coming back for another season, I'm like, yeah, then it's worth maybe checking out. Silo being renewed for 2 more seasons. It's going to get a full 4-season run. I will now very safely say, check out Silo. It's a fun show. It's not going to leave you hanging. It's going to conclude. It's based on books that concluded and have a conclusion. It's not always my favorite show. I don't love the pacing, but quite honestly, the fact that they're maybe speeding up the ending a tiny bit might be a good thing. And so I think that this is a very good sign for the show. I think that like it's hopefully freeing for people to get more invested in it because it's going to be a completed story and it's a fun show and it's the second season has been very fun so far. So yeah,
I totally agree. Yeah.
all right. Okay, let's talk about some of the new shows that aired this week.
Well, I name dropped
Shows.
one. Should we start with No Good Deed? Because I already mentioned it.
Let's do it. Grace, you watched a couple episodes of No Good Deed. I
Yeah.
watched the whole thing.
Oh wow. Okay, great. So I'll start and then you chime in about what you
Please.
think. So Ray Romano and Lisa Kudrow starring in this show where they're trying to sell their villa, and then there's a series of other people who are invested in wanting to buy it, including somebody who wants to turn it into like basically wants to like I believe the premise is like tear it down. There's a family who are trying to get pregnant, although it's a lesbian couple, and one of the women thinks that they've kind of stopped, and the other one is secretly still trying to do it. There's also you start to like they get these 3 different groups of people who want to buy the property, and then you get invested in their storyline along with the central premise of like should Ray Romano and Lisa Kudrow actually sell the property. I think it's a pretty fun, it's pretty simple premise, I think, that I think so far through 2 episodes is my caveat, I think has worked really well. I think Lisa Kudrow and Ray Romano are very, very funny. I do feel like there's one piece that's the Dennis Leary piece that feels the most it's almost like a mystery-ish type. Well, there is a mystery to the show as well. I guess I could say that in terms of one of the reasons why they may want to or may not want to sell the home, which gets revealed pretty quickly. And I feel like that's plotty stuff. So I'll leave it. That to me feels like I really like the motivation of like, especially Lisa Kudrow's character. I'm not sure like the surrounding stuff is working as well, but it's good enough for me to keep going, Taran. I didn't stop watching because I wasn't interested. I just was watching other things.
I will say, I think the first 2 episodes were probably my least favorite.
Oh wow.
Not by a
Okay.
huge margin, but like I gave the first 2 episodes like 6 out of 10. I was like, this is fine. And then the rest of the season was basically like a 7 out of 10 for me. It was just like, okay,
Okay.
yeah, like I got into the groove of it. I kind of like acclimated to the universe where it's like it is kind of a dark comedy. There's some mystery, there's some like violence and dark themes, but it's very silly. And so the combination of those two things was like hard to grasp at first.
That's what I
But
think. That's
one,
what that's what I'm trying to jive with. There's just like very
yeah,
jauntiness, and then Dennis Leary shows up, and he's like, "Hey," and you're like, "Go relax,
yeah,
bro."
okay. So there's what happens. So the first like 15 minutes of the or first 10 to 15 minutes of the episode, it's people walk, it's an open house. You're introduced to various families and characters that are trying to potentially buy this house. You're introduced to the sellers, and I was like, oh, this is like a funny little selling a house comedy. And then Dennis Leary shows up, and I paused the episode because I finished eating,
Huh.
and I was like telling people about the show. I was like, oh, I just started watching the show. It's like this cute little show. You'd probably enjoy it. And then like later came back, unpaused it, and like immediately like graphic violence.
Like real graphic, like super super. There's a moment that I don't get like weak kneed about a lot of stuff. It made my wheeze go neek, my knees go weak is what happened. I wixed up my merds there, Taran. Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just complete tone shift for me, and I was like, "Oh, this is a completely different show than I thought." Actually, that show that I recommended.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? It's from the creators of Dead to Me, which, to be fair, I do actually feel like there is a little bit of that. I actually do feel like there is a little bit of Michael Schurness that you can sort of, and I don't mean this like with this. I mean like generally. I do feel like the evolution of sitcom television, there was like the Office like boom of like Parks and Rec and all of the things like Modern Family, the stuff that like mockumentary or workplace comedies. Then you get, I think, like Michael Schur comes in, and he comes from The Office, but he puts this spin on it, which is like, I think what like the biggest difference I think between his stuff and then the Mike is like there's such a I feel like Michael Scott doesn't totally always work in a Michael Schur comedy, just because he's so like, my dad hates Michael. My dad thinks he's the most annoying whereas like I feel like I feel like he tends to be kinder to people. Michael Schur does, but he does also delve into the Good Place is all about like literally like morality. Like literally, it's about morality of people. Brooklyn Nine-Nine, obviously, there's a lot of like stuff about like justice system and cops in that show. I feel like you can feel the evolution of like Dead to Me. Dead to Me is about a woman who runs over her husband's or a friend's husband, or like a woman's husband. Is that not right? Am I like
The
isn't
person
that
she
Dead to
runs
Me?
over, it got complicated. I can't remember exactly. It might have been
Well, they become
a
friends because she
twin.
runs over this woman's husband, right? Or
Yes,
Christina
yes,
Applegate's
that's
husband
right.
is.
She's the one that ran over the other person's husband. Yeah, yeah, that's what happens.
So that has a pretty dark premise. So I feel like there's like, and
Yeah,
this is from the same creators. I feel like you can feel that a little bit in this of like,
you do definitely feel that.
yeah,
Dead to Me, like that vibe is definitely there. Linda Cardellini plays a very different character in this
it's
one,
true.
which and she's phenomenal in this.
She is really good.
But really, like the whole ensemble is really really fun, and I just thought it was like a good time. It was just like easy to just have on, and as it progressed, it was like the characters became a little more endearing to me, and the mystery was interesting, and I thought it was yeah, it was good.
I have one more. I will officially give this person the stamp of approval as a temporary honorary tastemaker. Brandon Donlin said he was enjoying this show,
Mm,
so take
there
that
you
for
go.
what I think. Brandon Donlin is very funny, so if he's finding a comedy funny, it's funny. It should be funny.
Yeah,
So there you
stacked
go.
cast as well, as we've already mentioned.
Yeah.
In fact, I will use this as a slight teaser. The daughter of Ray Romano and Lisa Kudrow. I was like, she looks so familiar, and I couldn't
Oh.
put my finger on why she was familiar. But Grace, I will answer this for you. Don't look it up. I will answer this for you later in the podcast.
Okay.
Um, anyway, let's talk about some of the other things that came out here.
Oh, okay. The
Um,
big one, Taran. Can we talk about the big one?
let's talk about the big one. Dexter.
No, 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 no. It's back. It's
Dun,
back.
dun, dun,
Dexter's
dun, dun,
back.
dun, 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 dun. We mentioned last week, I was a huge Dexter fan, still am. I love
Yeah.
the original show. Dexter Original Sin aired its pilot episode, its first episode here. And this is the prequel series. And what they have done is they have recast all of the characters as younger versions of themselves. I mentioned that, like, I was like, it's kind of weird that they're doing this because there's already so much young Dexter content in the original show.
That was the
The other
alternative title of the show, was Young Dexter.
Young Dexter. The other thing about this that I thought was weird, and I don't think I mentioned, was that, like, when you look at the cast list, it's literally like the whole cast of the original show, just younger versions, which is such a weird choice. Like, all of the same characters, because it's not like Dexter was known for its characters. Like,
there's one that they're I felt that time when I was watching. I was like, oh yeah, like that person's in the show, not like, oh my god, yeah.
And so it was a strange thing to even look at. Now, here's the thing. You start watching Dexter Original Sin, and it kicks off with the original classic opening, with like the preparing food. It's like they're doing the whole thing over, but with the new actors. But the new actors, they're doing like the same facial expressions. Like, the whole thing is like, and this, you watch that, and that is the whole show. That is the whole episode. I could not get it out of my head the entire time. I felt like I was watching a parody the whole time.
They've actually, like, to their credit, they've actually mostly cast this almost like, I'm not going to say well, because I think that there is a level to which, like, it's
they
mostly
cast it like SNL would have cast their parody of Dexter.
I do think Patrick Gibson as Dexter is quite strong. I think it's probably the strongest casting. I mean,
once he changes his hair, it's better.
Yeah, I think that is a joke, because I think that there's like flashbacks to in Dexter where he is wearing basically that exact
his
wig.
bad wigs. Yeah.
I think the best casting is actually Christian Slater, because he doesn't really look like Harry, but he's really good. Deb is tough. She doesn't seem like Deb at all. Basically,
she doesn't look like Deb at all, but like, I thought she did an okay job.
The one piece, there's quite a famous person who works at that place, who I don't think, am I wrong that we have not seen him yet, in terms of he becomes very important in a season of Dexter. Surprise mother effer. Is he not in?
I thought I saw Dokes, but I wasn't sure.
Oh, okay, maybe okay. I'm seeing on the casting maybe TBA for Dokes. So far that was the one. Yeah. So I'm also just gonna fully spoil what happens in the first 5 minutes of Dexter for people. So if you really don't want a Dexter Original Sin, if you really don't want to know, please fast forward.
This is worth actually pointing out, that the beginning of Dexter Original Sin will spoil the ending to, like, fully spoil the ending to Dexter New Blood, which was the sequel series,
which also is basically going to spoil the ending of Dexter, because Dexter, it's Dexter, and then Dexter New Blood, and then Dexter Original Sin, and there's also another show on the way that's coming that they announced at their Comic-Con when they were talking about Dexter Original Sin. So I'm just going to do this because I think we need to talk about it. It's
not hard to figure out how the spoiling is happening, considering the onslaught of shows that are coming up.
Okay. Dexter the show ends. He becomes a lumberjack. We all know it. We all know. We're maybe the worst ending of television ever. They're like, we should fix that. They do fix it. Dexter New Blood happens. They do a whole season of a show where he has a son. He learns about his son. His son's a serial killer. His son kills Dexter. Dexter dies. Dexter Original Sin starts, and they've already announced that Dexter Resurrection is happening. So at the beginning of Dexter Original Sin, Dexter is, surprise, not dead. He survived. They say that it was because he was in the snow. If he had been shot in the summer, he would have died, but he didn't. He died in the winter, so he's alive. And he says, wow, it's true. Life really does flash before your eyes. It's the narration of Dexter Original Sin.
So wild. It's so wild that it's like, it's incredible to me. Like, I used to think, like, man, the books, way out of left field. Like, they're really wild books. But the show, I think, has officially turned the corner, and the show is starting to become more wild than the books, which are, I believe, about aliens. So
I didn't know you could jump over a shark this many times. I didn't know you were allowed to.
Yeah. So what I will say is, I think people are happy that they're retconning the ending again, because they also hated the ending to Dexter New Blood. But man, yeah, I hope the show gets better, but I thought it was very bad. They basically, the plot of this first episode is the plot of an episode that already happened in Dexter. We already saw the flashbacks. We already saw people acting out these things as themselves.
So I just need to check. I just need to check like what Showtime has, because I feel like nothing has felt more. I guess this does make sense with like the selling of show, that they're just trying to like milk any money they can out of this. This I don't think I've seen probably something quite as blatant as. Well, I don't know. They have Yellow Jackets. What else do they got? They don't really have much, I don't think. If I'm looking at, they did have Shameless. They have The Agency, this new show, The Curse. Yeah, that's pretty thin over there at Showtime. I think I maybe understand why they're like just you know when you like want to get something dry, you just churn it as hard, and you're like, I don't think it's dry yet. You just keep churning.
I just feel like there's a lot of different ways you could do this. This is just such a wild choice to me, and like I need to keep reiterating it. I could not get the like SNL parody out of my head. Like it felt like that to me the whole time because they are just so blatantly trying to. And that's the thing too, is like I said, it's like Dexter's not exactly known for like its deep characters. And so in order to convey like, oh, this is Vince, this is Masuka, like, oh, he's just going to be leering at women the whole time.
Yeah.
Hey, guess it's Deb. She's like, oh, your French is excellent because I like to swear.
I actually like that line. I actually like that line, Taran. I like that one. I like that one. Yeah, someone swears and she goes, sorry for my French. And she goes, actually, your French is excellent. I like that line a lot. I think it's great.
I'm not. I needed to. I forgot to look up. Patrick Dempsey is in this
Patrick Dempsey
as
is,
like
yeah,
the police chief, and I was like, oh, that's like a good get, right? Like he's a big name. I thought he was like he was not in this for very long, but I thought he was very bad.
Sarah Michelle Gellar is also in this.
She's
These are
also
kind of like
randomly in this with like very little to do in the first episode.
they're kind of the two like new characters we don't really know from Dexter. Here's to me the part that annoys me is when it's, I don't mind grabbing for cash. I mean, it's so part of our culture these days of like, I'm watching Star Wars Skeleton Crew. Yeah, I'm watching the thing that's basically like, were you a fan of Star Wars as a kid? Here's a show of kids who are fans of Star Wars. Like,
I don't either.
I'm fine. It's fine. Do it. Go for it. I was Kevin Costner spending all of his money to make Western movies. Whatever. Go for it. Live your life, man. This one, I get annoyed because they're like, this scene at the beginning of the show is going to happen so we can do another show that you haven't watched yet. Like normally the homework comes where you're like, oh my God, I didn't watch all the Marvel shows. Now the new Marvel movies coming out. I got to watch all the Marvel movies. This one is like at the beginning, they're like, I know we said that there's a new show coming, so we had to make sure that he's alive. So he's alive in this show, so he can be alive in that show. And it's very, very annoying to me. Yeah.
Genuinely, Dexter is not hard. Like it's such a fun little premise. It's a serial killer that kills killers. You just need to have him kill people and get into workplace drama and almost get caught sometimes, and you could do that forever. But instead, they just constantly do weird things. And
Well,
it's like, what are we doing here? Like, just do anything.
Well, back to Silo though, I do think this is like the exact opposite of the Silo thing of being like, it's going to end after season 4. This is like, we don't know when it's going to end because we could make a lot of money off this. And the problem is that at some point, I mean, I know you say you can do it forever, and I guess you can do that forever.
I think you can.
But also, like, what is satisfying about stories is that they have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And like, yes, I think that there's a way to have done this that does not feel quite as bad as this was. And I think honestly, that where it goes back to is the original Dexter ending, which is the idea,
the original sin.
that does not does not feel to me like that. I feel like they were ready to end Dexter. This seems very clear that Dexter, Original Sin and Resurrections, Michael C. Hall's involvement in it came up because he reached out to Clyde Phillips and was like, hey, I think I want to do Dexter. And I think that like he's had a fine career outside of like post Dexter. He's not had a massive success. I think that he thought at some point he had to stop being Dexter in order to do other things and not be associated with Dexter. The problem is once you decide you're ending the story of Dexter, there is only one way to end the story of a serial killer who kills other serial killers or other bad guys. And it's that person has to die. And they did not do that. Then they were like, man, we really messed up and I think we have to do that. And then he did die, and now they want to do more so that he didn't die. And in a story about death, Taran, it does seem pretty clear that that guy has to like. Well, there's I guess one other way, which is he goes to jail. There's two things you can do: he dies, or he goes to jail and faces like the the justice system. They have chosen not to do literally either of those things now.
He could also start like a little serial killer school. I feel like that could be a fun ending.
That basically was New Blood. He was his kid's Harry. He was his Harry. He okay. And then he was like, oh, I gotta break the cycle. It's never gonna work because I'm just a bag. And then they did it. And then they ended it. And they're like, just kidding, we didn't do it. So
Yeah,
I will say the fan bros are so happy, Taran, that he's not dead. They're so happy that Dexter, and I think Jess said it before we started. It's all the people who think Dexter is a good guy. Are so happy that he is alive. If you're listening to this and that was you, do some introspective thinking about why.
All right. Well, let's talk about a couple of the other shows that came out. Secret Level on Amazon, the video game animation show in the vein of Love, Death, and Robots, came out. I watched a few episodes of that. It was fine. Nothing to write home about. I thought the third episode was the best one I saw. It was, I don't remember what it was called. But it was fine. I don't think this is anything that like so far. There's nothing. I guess what I would say is so far I've not seen anything super stand out. New World was I think the best one that I saw. And it looks like maybe some of the other ones were a little more highly rated, like Warhammer and Unreal Tournament. So maybe those are going to be a little bit better. I'll probably keep watching. They're very short. Some of them are as short as like 7 minutes. It felt like.
Can I just pick and choose? Because I was like, "Ooh, Warhammer." That's interesting.
Absolutely. Okay, you can pick and choose. So just like figure out which ones are like the most highly rated. Like I said, I'll probably continue to watch through these. If there are any that I think are particularly standout that are worth watching or checking out, you can. If you just like to appreciate really beautiful animation, just check the whole thing out. It's great animation.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, speaking of animation, speaking of good animation, Dream Productions, which is the Inside Out. Inside Out is, I believe, the name.
Yeah, Inside Out. Yeah.
It's a little spin-off show. This was, speaking of Michael Schur, this was like a mockumentary style show about producing dreams within Riley, the character of Inside Out. The premise of Inside Out, if you don't know, is that like there's little people inside of you that represent different emotions and do little jobs and stuff. And so this is like the jobs of the dream producers who produce your dreams every night. It's a fun concept for like the whole premise is good. That's why the movies did amazing. I thought the show was fine. I thought it was kind of cute at first, but I watched the whole thing, 4 episodes. Didn't particularly go anywhere for me. Like if you watch the first episode, you kind of get the gist of it.
They seem a little long for like a Disney Pixar. I guess, I don't know, 27 to 31 minutes. That feels long.
Yeah. It just kind of like I took a nap during one of the episodes. Like it just kind of. The animation's fantastic though.
I know it looks incredible. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Then I did manage to check out The Count of Monte Cristo.
Oh, okay.
The French production that is in fact in English and does in fact have Jeremy Irons.
Is this a movie? This is a television show.
This is the television show. The movie is coming out this week.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
The movie is in French, I believe.
Right.
So far, Count of Monte Cristo, I have actually read the book, the very long book. And so far, it's pretty by the numbers in terms of just like representing what's happening here. Nothing to write home about so far. It's, if you really like the story, then it's maybe worth checking out. But yeah, I wouldn't say go out of your way to find it. It's pretty hard to find.
Okay.
Then
I watched a few movies. If you want to take a detour to the movie theater, Taran.
Are they new movies?
They are all new movies.
Okay.
One of them I didn't go to the movie theaters for, actually. I watched on Netflix. Let's start with that one. I watched Carry On.
Oh, me too.
With Taran Egerton and Jason Bateman. And I thought, pretty fun. I gave it like 3.5 out of 5. It's like, is it silly and contrived at times? 100%, absolutely. But it does kind of feel like a thing. There's a thing recently, and I think we've talked about it on this podcast, but it's very prevalent. Is that like there's so many miniseries that get made nowadays that should be movies, and this feels like one that if this was like a little better, they would have made it into like a 5-part, 6-part miniseries. And I'm so glad it's a little worse so that it got made into a Netflix movie. It's really easy to watch. It's like billed as a Christmas movie. It's not really Christmassy, really at all, but it's fine. Bateman is great in it, and everything else is like, yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
You blew my mind when you said Taron Egerton because I spent the whole movie very stupidly thinking this was Ben McKenzie.
Nope,
Uh,
not Ben McKenzie. Taran Egerton. Yep. This is
and I was like,
Rocket
man, he
Man.
looks great. He still looks so young.
Nope. This is yeah.
He's making a comeback.
That's right. That's right. No, what'd you think of Carry On?
I thought it was a great dumb
Yeah,
movie that
exactly.
is properly Christmas themed. And if you don't want to watch Hot Frosty or Holiday Touchdown, then Carry On is a movie that you might be able to sneak in, and just have a decent time of it.
Yeah, TSA agent who aspires to do more has a wife who will be in danger if he doesn't let the carry-on bag with bad things on the plane. That's the whole
Yeah.
premise of the movie. It's entirely in an airport. It's pretty fun and mindless, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I also watched Craven the Hunter, Taran.
You watched it.
I
Okay.
did go watch it. Exactly pretty much everybody is
Was it
saying.
as bad as Madam Web
I think it's better than
or
Madam Web.
worse?
I think it's
Okay,
better than
better.
Madam Web. I think Aaron Tyler is like the what real question here is, Taran. He has been so heavily rumored to be the next James Bond. And does a movie like this affect his odds of being the next James Bond at all? Because it's a
I don't
pretty
think so.
I don't think so either, but there's
I
some
think
like
they
yeah.
gave up on this movie long ago.
Yeah, it's been delayed
I
twice.
I think that I bet that most people listening to this, although maybe people listening to this are more tapped in than usual, or maybe they're not because they're listening to us for the information. But like, I would imagine that a good percentage of the listeners and or viewers wouldn't have even known this movie existed if not for this podcast.
It's
Because
it's very confusing in terms of like because there's like so many different universes you have to keep track of. This is the Sony Spider-Man universe, which includes no Spider-Man films.
it's all of the Spider-Man villains, but no Spider-Man. So like Madam, and I don't even know if they're villains
Venom,
or whatever.
Morbius, Madam Web, and Craven the Hunter. So 3 Venom
Yes.
movies and 3 other movies. The last one,
Basically,
it's
Venom
over.
did way better than it should have. And they were like, let's just do a bunch of these. And they've all been bad and they've all done poorly.
Yeah,
Except for Venom.
the plan was all of these people, and someone would have to correct me whether Madam Web is part of this, but they're all part of the Sinister Six: Morbius, Venom, and Craven. And I don't know whether Madam Web is or is not. I don't think she is, but somebody could tell me I'm wrong. And the idea was to basically do their own like Suicide Squad or whatever bad guy version of the Sony people. This has been a tremendous failure, and it's just ending, and they're not gonna do it anymore. Craven was totally, I'd say fine because I actually think like it's like a movie that got made to be on the big screen. So it's not like I honestly think Madam Web is so much worse than this.
It
I
sounds
still
like what
gave
you're
it
saying is that Craven wasn't bad enough to be worth watching. Like, I think Madam
that's
Web probably was so bad that you might want to watch it. But Craven sounds like it's not even worth that.
I will say there are a couple action scene moments that you could just watch on YouTube later that literally made the entire audience gasp. Like,
Ooh.
like that does happen, but the story is so messy, the dialogue is clumsy, everything other than the action sequences and a couple of the performances are pretty bad. But there are some stuff that you're like, oh, I have not seen that before. He like the thing is that like he's kind of like a lion man hunter. That's kind of what he is agile and he's just hunting people and like it does look pretty good sometimes, but like you don't have to. You can just watch them on YouTube later. Or like when it comes on streaming, just fast forward to that part and watch that. Like watch those scenes. You're fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's
My
see.
last movie story
There's
is War of the Rohirrim, which I thought was like again also like
oh yeah.
I'm not yeah clearly just got made so that they could keep the rights to Lord of the
Yeah.
Rings. It's fine if you like anime. I think you might like. I think the story is is like simple enough that it was like easy to follow for like a high fantasy thing. Brian Cox plays the king, King Helm in this movie. I think if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, you're going to watch it. If you're not a Lord of the Rings fan, you don't need to rush out and watch it. You could wait for it to come to streaming later if you're like kind of interested. That's probably my review. Yeah.
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 All right. The only other thing I watched that started Bookie season 2, I checked out the first couple episodes of Bookie season 1, and it was. I mean, I originally thought it was not a comedy, and then when I realized it was a comedy, I had different expectations, and it met those expectations pretty much exactly. It's just a fine comedy. It's about a bookie, and they get into various violent hijinks. It's nothing special so far for me.
A lot of cameos, right? Are the cameos fun? Have you seen the cameos yet?
There are cameos.
Yeah.
Yep, some cameos in there. It's to me a comedy in the vein of like the old school like Entourage kind of
Yeah.
thing,
That's a good
but with a little more violence, I guess.
that's a good comp.
Um, okay. I wanted to catch up on a couple of things. While we're talking about movies, I guess. Um, I watched a couple movies, and I liked both of them a lot.
Okay.
One of the movies I watched was Heretic.
Oh yes. Okay. Fun.
Yes, Hugh Grant recently nominated for a Golden Globe in
Yes.
Heretic.
Yes.
This is the horror movie, which has now, I think, really skyrocketed in my horror movie rankings for the
Okay.
year. Really enjoyed it. Basically, basic premise is these two Mormon missionaries go to Hugh Grant's house to preach Mormonism, and he invites them in, and then bad things happen. And what I will say, the thing I liked about this the most is that I would say that like this was a very talky horror movie. It's obviously violent
Yeah.
eventually, but most of the tension comes from character interactions rather than like lengthy chase scenes and all of that stuff, which obviously is bread and butter for horror. But I tend to enjoy like the more tense character stuff, and so really, really liked that. Hugh Grant is obviously excellent in it. But I actually thought there was another actor, Chloe East, I thought was really phenomenal in this. And it turns out when I went to look up the daughter in No Good Deed, it was Chloe East. It was
Oh.
the woman from
Oh.
Heretic that I
Oh.
had just watched that movie, and
Oh.
she was completely unrecognizable in the show. For
She's
me, at
a
least.
she's from the Fablemans as well. She plays like
Mhm.
the girlfriend of Sammy. She goes to prom with. That's how I kind of know her. Um, I like Heretic a lot. I agree with you. It's very talky. They really work. Like Hugh Grant delivers most of the long talking scenes, and so they're very fun. I think the ideas of the film are very fun. There's a really fun Topher Grace appearance.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
was like, "Is that Topher Grace?"
yeah, it's great. I like it a lot. And then yeah, as it like descends into madness, it's scary and good, fun as well. So yeah,
Really
Heretic.
liked it. I also watched The Wild Robot,
Yes, okay,
yeah, which was also excellent. I
okay.
thought it was very good. I was expecting it to be good. Then it started, and I was like, maybe it's one of those things that other people like, but I'm not going to like because there's like lengthy period of time and not a lot of dialogue. And I was like, oh, it's going to be one of those. But then there's actually a lot of dialogue, and it was actually very good. I really did like it a lot.
I
Yeah.
think that my thing with it is I think it's really good in Acts 1 and Act 2, and then it loses it a little bit for me in Act 3, but that's just like I think if I rewatch it I'd be fine knowing what it becomes. It's fine. It's a lot of animals in a way that I didn't think it was going to be so many animals, which is fine. The other thing I would say is like if you have kids, like I have nieces and nephews, Wild Robot, it was a book series, and I believe they're planning to do another movie, but there are a bunch of books and they're good gifts. I like getting my nieces and nephews things that they can then read, and then we can watch the thing together. That's one of my favorite things. So
Mhm.
yeah, book series, The Wild Robot.
Yeah.
Probably will win best
Definitely.
animated picture. Well, Inside Out probably, but
I mean, okay,
I-
what were the nominations again? Best animated?
well, for Golden Globe, let's see what the nominations are.
I would guess
Oh,
right now for me that Wild Robot is my top animated for the year.
Flow is the other one. It's playing limited release for
I
now.
have meant to try to see that.
Memoir of a Snail, Moana 2, and Wallace and Gromit. That is not Running Out of Clay.
Okay, so I have not
Yeah.
seen any of them. I cannot give a good I've only seen Inside Out 2 and Wild Robot. So far for me, Wild Robot is better.
I agree, but Inside Out won the most money, so made the most
It
money.
did win the most money, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, some other things. I wanted to check in on Day of the Jackal because it aired its finale. Season 1 is over. And I don't have a ton of extra stuff to say about it other than the fact that like I really do think it kind of drops off toward the end. I thought the finale was fine. They made a couple of interesting choices, but I think some part of what drew me in was like it felt very like detailed, like the assassinations, and I think by the end it was like this is a show to not be detailed. This is a turn your brain off show because none of what they're doing makes sense. And so now it's more of like, I think if you like this show, it's because you're vibing out on what's his name?
Eddie Redmayne. He said he signed up for this show because of the finale. That's what he said. He read the finale and said he would do it. Bad choice by Eddie Redmayne. I'm slowly. They're only releasing this. They've only been releasing this weekly in Canada. So
it wasn't a bad finale. It just wasn't like didn't blow my socks off. You know.
Well,
what I mean?
also he might have said something in a way to make someone write the article that says Eddie Redmayne, in the finale of the Day of the Jackal. Like, oh my god,
he's good in it, and I think one of the more interesting things about this show is that the show is kind of about him, and Lashana Lynch plays like his counterpart who's hunting him. And I find it interesting. The show very clearly does not want you to like Lashana Lynch's character, but she's ostensibly like on the good side.
Oh, that's weird.
But she's like, but Eddie Redmayne as the Jackal is like, you're supposed to really like him. And he's very likable in the role. And so it's been interesting to see some of the discourse about Bianca's character, the character of Bianca, I should say, and like where people fall on like we're not supposed to like her, right? Like everybody's always telling her she's such a bad person, and she's constantly doing bad things.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm almost so just not because the finale is aired, but because the finale is airing is what we do in the shadows. I caught up with that, and it's just continues to be so funny. And the premises, I think it's kind of sometimes I'm like, man, they're really doing a whole episode in the finale on this, and then I'm like, yeah, that was worth it. That was so funny. They had so many funny jokes. So loving what we do in the shadows. The finale airs this week. So excited for this, the series finale of the show. And I recently got to watch the episode that they filmed right across the street from my house. So I was very excited to get to see that. So yeah, it's fun.
I did see, I think it was episode 3 of The Agency. And I know that we had both really liked, or at least were interested in the first couple of episodes. Episode 3, I think it's episode 3. What I will say is like I'm putting the brakes on The Agency a little bit. I thought like this is not quite episode 3 for me. This is not quite where I thought. Like first 2 episodes I gave 8 out of 10. I was like, this is a great time. Third episode 6 out of 10. I was like, oh, maybe this isn't going to be what I want it to be. I have not checked out the 4th episode yet. But if you were like excited about The Agency, I'm putting the brakes on it right now, for me at least.
I feel like people were surprised at how high we were on the first 2. That's like kind of the feedback I saw from listeners being like, oh, I checked it out and I wasn't liking it. And I do think there's a lot of other TV you could be choosing to spend your time on. Like in a vacuum, I was telling people watch it. And then when they'd be like, oh, but I could watch Say Nothing or like whatever. And I was like, Black Dove. Or Black Dove. I was like, yeah, probably watch those instead. The thing that's interesting about The Agency that I feel like the other conversation that's happening about it is that because it was a full 5-season show, I think the people who watched that are also being a little down on it so far. Like, ooh, it's not quite, it's not quite doing the same thing. And so that to me is like also feeling me to feel a little standoffish from it in terms of like rushing to go watch the new episode. And also because it's a Showtime show, and if you get attached, they'll just keep reviving everybody. I don't know. No, not really, but yeah. I haven't watched episode 3. As I said, I kind of felt like the energy, out there was a little bit like, yeah, we'll see. So I'm
I'm
waiting.
hoping it pulls back, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, we'll see. I guess is our
we'll see.
favorite catchphrase.
Yellowstone also ended recently. Big
Ended,
news.
over, done. Yeah.
Over.
But they don't worry, they're fine. They aired the trailer for 1923, and they have Landman and Special Ops Linus and every other show that Taylor Sheridan is doing. So they just like swapped Sunday nights with Taylor Sheridan shows so that people would not be sad that Kevin Costner was on Yellowstone and all of those shows. The weird thing is that not only are they also like they're doing incredibly well numbers wise, also people seem to really like them. So I guess Taylor Sheridan is just, he knows what to do on television. I don't know.
I saw an article recently. I had not known this. Apparently, he's in most of his shows.
He is. He is in
Acting
most of
in
his
them. I
shows.
didn't know this,
Not
and
like
they were
big
like,
roles, but like, yeah, he's in everyone.
but so the article I saw, and I don't know the show. So if this is a misrepresentation, I just want to put it out there. I can't like back this up. But the article is like, yeah, he just writes himself as like the badassest of
He
badasses.
Well, kind of. So in Yellowstone, he like sells horses. Like that but
and,
he's just a
and
cool
he's
looking guy who
constantly
sells horses.
writing in scenes for him to show off his horse riding skills.
Yeah, that okay, yeah, that is true. Yeah. Like
and and women really want him all the time and like
yeah, that's true. I feel like it could be way worse. I do feel like it could be worse than it is. And then but it's also not that he's just like, oh, was that him in the background? Like, no, he's like in the he's like in the shows, but he's like,
Mhm.
yeah, that is true that he does write himself that way, which is, whatever.
I just thought it was
Fine.
funny. Listen, honestly, I don't really care. I just thought it
It
was a
is
very funny
funny.
thing that I heard.
It is pretty funny.
Um, all right. Anything else to catch up on before we
The
talk about what's coming up?
I should have done this earlier, but the other movie I watched this week is My Old Ass. I watched that one. This is the
Oh
Aubrey
yeah.
Plaza
I
movie.
started watching that and I forgot to finish it.
I started watching it on a plane and then didn't finish it. And then I finally finished it. And I will just say it kind of has my heart because it's set in Northern Ontario. Not quite. There's this interesting thing like Northern Ontario, there is an area called the Muskokas, and then there's also a city called Muskoka. So I went to a summer camp in the Muskokas, but not in Muskoka. I don't know if that makes any sense, but this movie is set in Muskoka. So it holds a very special place to my heart. I really loved seeing it. It was great. That was very good. It's very funny. It's quick. It's like 90 minutes. I think it might even be less than 90 minutes. Really, really worked for me. One of my favorite movies of the year for sure. So My Old Ass.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about what's coming up. I gotta say, not a lot.
No, it's people
Did
aren't
not
going to
see a
drop their
lot.
shows this week because obviously the holidays are approaching. Beast Games arrives this week, Taran.
That's true.
Surrounded by controversy, Beast Games. But it is coming this week. Over 1,000 contestants, like almost 2,000. And he's just being sued for this. But it is for me
Can
what's
I tell you?
interesting.
Yeah.
Yes. The only thing is I think it's an interesting venture for Amazon to like take the biggest streamer of all time and be like, will you come make a show for us? That to me is interesting.
I did a video with Rob about this because it's a very fascinating idea. Like, can the biggest YouTuber translate to like production, like actual Hollywood-esque production, streaming, like the established media, right?
Yeah.
Now, so far, before the show has even aired, the answer seems to be no. Standards for production weren't that high. But
Yeah.
what I will
Yeah.
say is, like, I'm still interested to see how it translates in terms of the content itself, if it's
Yeah.
able to work, because like the production side of things, like that can be fixed or that can be done by somebody else who's more capable of it. But like, can that style of content, YouTube style of content, Mr. Beast is like the face of YouTube content, or at least has been for a little while. Can that translate to proper streaming infrastructure and stuff like that? The other thing I'm confused about with this show is like I gotta tell you, I keep trying to read the articles about like what the controversy is, and I just feel like there's not like one thing to like
It-
hold to like hang your hat on. It's like a bunch of little things.
well,
And it's like, well, what is like the big thing that everyone's mad about? And I think it's just like we're just mad about the show, is what I've gathered.
I think there's two buckets you can put it in, which is one
Okay.
is like I do think that there are ways in which what they did in terms of running a reality show are actually not that much different than the ways other reality shows would have run their
It
reality
reminded me a
show.
lot of what I was hearing about the Squid Game reality show
Right.
beforehand. Like a
And
lot of the same complaints,
And I
actually.
think the reason that that happens is because they went with enormous casts, both
Yeah.
of those shows. So the problems that you might have, say, on something, you know, as big as Survivor, that might be, first of all, that's just like such a like, you know, think about like season one Survivor stuff where we might have heard like,
Mhm.
oh, this thing happened, you know, like I was not treated well. I think that like that's probably has happened in the course of like many shows that we've watched where they felt like they didn't get access to a lot of hygiene. There's a lot of stuff about like not getting clean underwear for a long time. Like that's stuff that like I think like if we're in the reality TV bubble like you and I are, it's like, oh, is that really like is that like the worst thing that could have happened? Not getting food again. Lots of these shows are like based on the idea of not getting food. I really would need to see what the format of the show looks like to then be able to judge whether the way that they were treated would match up with the way the show intends to be. And I do think there's a big difference between like when you go on Survivor, you know you're not like you know the standards mostly to which you will be living in as a, like Big Brother, like a big, you know,
Mhm.
and even if you don't, it comes as like a twist of the show. Like you're living in the backyard for this full week, right? But then multiply all of the problems you might hear about on a singular show with a cast of 2,000 people. So of course you're gonna have more people. And ultimately, the other controversy of the show is that enough people got together to like sue the show for so that's one of them. The other one is like Mr. Beast's general, the things that have come out about his YouTube show that then people
Mhm.
I think are assuming will be the same way that's happening on the show. The YouTube stuff is a lot of like, yeah, they say like anybody can win a contest, but it does seem like a lot of like the friends of people he's hired end up winning a lot of things. Or like a scene where you like, for me, Mr. Beast is fascinating because on one hand, I kind of think like, oh, I kind of hate as a society. Like this is can be a thing where it's like he gives people like like he fixes their eyes. I'm like, how horrific that like the only way you could get your eyes treated in America is to like get, not only, but like this is how it was done. On the other hand, like am I to like, I don't know. I think that's kind of fascinating that he's willing to do it. And a lot of the stuff that he does, he actually does take the revenue in to do things like this. Like I've started following him where like he would be like, yeah, what do you want in the store? Like everything you can fit in this square box, you can have in the store. And it was like, you know, people were so thankful. It's a whole series of things on you. There's this whole thing. There's a guy I watch who often just like pays for people's groceries at the store. He'll be like, can I pay for your cart? And then they go out and it's these like very emotional things that I think like do say something about humanity. I think like Mr. Beast isn't going to fix all of the things that are wrong with the world, and I can't really blame him for doing this stuff. Then you do hear about the ways in which, like, yeah, it does seem like every once in a while, like it's somebody's friends who gets the Xbox in the video or whatever, you know, and that probably flies on YouTube. And probably, I wonder whether did or did like, you know, a lot of this time when people talk about like reality shows that you and I watch, Taran, being rigged, it's like you actually like if you're advertising it as a game show, you actually like are held to a specific level of standard that like you could break, but then you would, you know, you might get, you know, in trouble for breaking it. So I have not seen anything like all of the lawsuits seem to be about mistreatment, not about literally the rules being unfair from what I have been able to see.
We'll have to wait and see on that one as well then. All right. The other things coming, really the only shows I even saw upcoming, there's one called Laid.
This is
Uh
Stephanie Ju from Everything Ever All at Once. Looks
mhm.
fine. It's Peacock comedy, Taryn.
Yep. Um
The
we'll see.
premise is that she's all of the men that she's slept with are dying. So I feel like I do feel like sometimes like the premise is like, you know, just like they're selling their house, they're, you know, whatever. This is all the men that she slept with are dying. That's probably enough for the premise of a show. It's a Peacock comedy. They did Poker Face. Like there's you know, this could work maybe. Josie
Could be
Mamet
fun.
plays her friend. So
This is what we're here for. We'll check it out and we'll let you know if it's good or if it's just meh. The other one is The Dragon Prince season 7, which is wild. I loved The Dragon Prince first 3 seasons. I thought it was very good. This is by some of the creators of Avatar: The Last Airbender, they went and made their own show on Netflix called The Dragon Prince, and you definitely get that vibe, especially in the first 3 seasons. I fell off hard in the 4th season. Have not watched it since.
Did you watch the
But
4th
it's
season? Because that was after a hiatus, right?
I did
Weren't they?
watch the 4th season, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
and from what I'm seeing, there is a big drop off in the rating for that season. And then it looks like season 6 is a bit of a bounce back. So there might be some resurgence here for the Dragon Prince, but just worth calling it out. 7 seasons is wild. That's a lot of seasons. There's 54 episodes before the 7th season is aired. So
So
it's another 9.
the part that I don't quite understand is that they have said it's the last season, but that there's also another saga planned. And I believe the sagas, Taran, were broken up into seasons within the show. So like the Dragon Princes 1 to 3, and then 4 to 7 are this new saga. And then they say they have another saga planned, but they've also announced this is the last season. So if it returns, it would have to return as a different show. No, you don't know. Yeah, just Taran shaking his head. That's what I read about this week. I've never seen any of this. Don't know that I will unless I hear it's. I mean, is the first so the first 2 seasons are billed as like the Dragon Prince saga. Is that worth watching the first 3?
I thought it was good. I really liked the first 3 seasons.
Yeah.
I was preaching like, hey guys, check out this show if you liked Avatar: The Last Airbender. Like this is what you want to see. And then yeah, something about the 4th season like really just threw me off. I guess man, it's been a little while. 2022, I guess not that long. But I was just so bored throughout that entire season, and it kind of just turned me off of the whole thing. But if you're interested, I'd say give it a shot. The animation in the first season, especially, was a little jarring to people because it's a different style. But I really liked it, and it does have those Avatar vibes for sure. But at 7 seasons, like I don't know if I can recommend the whole show.
Okay. Apparently, a few things that I wanted to read that I'm not interested in watching, but I'm interested that they're happening. Have you heard of the show Die Hard, Taran?
I have, yeah.
It's coming back, or is
Yeah.
back, I think already. I think it maybe is back already, and it's on the Roku channel, which I didn't realize was a thing. Used to be on Quibi, now it's on Roku. And this show has like J.K. Simmons, Catherine Hahn, Natalie Emanuel from Game of Thrones, and Kevin Hart as the lead. And they just dropped a full season of the show called Die Hard, which seems wild to me. I feel like that's like, how does that happen? That Kevin Hart, who's pretty famous, is just on the Roku channel. Don't understand.
He's had a couple of like he had another show I think that I watched that was like this random thriller that Kevin Hart was in. Just as an example, so I have seen Die Hard around. I've seen it. You know, it's Die Hard is airing again, and I'm like, oh, should I check it out? I think it was the show True Story. I think, yeah, True Story, which is a random show that he was on Netflix, which was actually a fine show. But so I'm here on Tracked.tv, and the first review for Die Hard pops up. 3 out of 10. I'm a big Kevin Hart fan, but this is straight ass.
Okay. All right. Well, that's Die Hard. I can't believe it has Catherine Hahn and J.K. Simmons in it. And it's just on the Roku channel. I don't understand. Okay. The other one, not scripted, Darren. Did you hear about Fast Friends? Have you heard of this? This is the Whitney Cummings game show that's basically Friends but an escape room.
Yeah, I've
it's
not
on
heard
HBO.
of this.
30th anniversary of the sitcom Friends. Chandler, Monica, Ross, and the other ones.
Competition game show that will take place across a number of the Friends shows, iconic sets, including Rachel and Monica's apartment and various other things. Fans will relive their favorite moments while being put to the test with trivia, puzzles, and games.
Yeah, this is a real show on Max.
It's
coming, and it's hosted by Whitney Cummings. Yeah, as Jess says in the chat, got to get that money for all the Gen Zs that got obsessed during COVID. So Fast Friends on Max. I don't think I'll be watching this one either, but I think it's very funny that it's a thing that exists in the world that they're made a television show on. Yeah, that's it. That's what I got. There's nothing real else. I think at the movies,
yep.
Is this the Mufasa weekend? Is that right? Or this is
Mufasa
and
and
Sonic.
Sonic.
Wow,
Yep.
that's a rough go for one of those two, I think.
Listen, I'm a fan of the Sonic movies.
Me too.
They're good.
But if you're gonna take your
And
kids,
man,
you're not gonna take your kids to both, I think, is the
when
problem.
they dropped that teaser for Shadow at the end of season movie, the second movie, I was like, what?
Yeah.
Because I was a big Sonic Adventure Battle 2 player.
The other one that comes this week is Baby Girl. This is Nicole Kidman. She won at the Venice Film Festival, her performance. I am not a fan of this movie. I think people are going to go wild for this movie. It's essentially Nicole Kidman and Harris Dickinson, where there's essentially Nicole Kidman is the CEO of a company, but like starts to have a romance with Harris Dickinson's character, who's younger, obviously, but he's also the one who like starts and controls the relationship, basically. And then they can't reveal the relationship because of the power dynamics at play. I thought this movie, I keep saying it's an interesting question of like sort of in the Me Too movement era of like what happens if the boss is a CEO and then she's whatever. I feel like the movie is not interested. It just mostly wants to have Nicole Kidman and Harris Dickinson do kind of kinky things that are not really that kinky, honestly.
Well, that was the thing about the listeners too, where I just felt like, what is happening with this situation where it feels like normally it feels like a very cut and dry situation, but it feels like you're trying to portray it to be something different. And it was, yeah, I don't
We'll
know what's
see.
going on.
She won at the Venice Film Festival for her performance in this. She's also been nominated for a Golden Globe. We'll see. Tell me if you like it. I'm not a big fan of it, but it's a movie that's coming out at this Friday, so we'll see. Brutalist also gets a limited release as well.
All right, I think that's it then. That's a bit of a packed one here because there's a lot to catch up on.
Guys, very quickly, I have one. I have the smallest of news stories that we haven't talked about. I talked about it with Owen. Did you see that? Who they cast as Jabba the Hutt's son in Mando and Grogu? Okay, if you could just please look up Jabba the Hutt's son, Star Wars. It's the Mandalorian Grogu movie, and you will never believe who they cast.
Rata.
Just say it out loud for the audience.
Jeremy Allen White has joined
Jeremy Allen White
film
from The Bear
Grogu as the voice of Jabba the Hutt's son, Rata the Hutt.
Why? He's not an interesting like he doesn't have like he's like I love him. He's such a good actor, but he's like a sad boy. He's not like a voice acting guy. But he's
if you can't see his like massive biceps and triceps through like
well, hopefully you will. Hopefully they'll CGI that in.
White t-shirt, like what is even happening?
It's the funniest news I saw all week. It's so funny. It's so funny, Taran. Jeremy Allen White. I don't understand this casting, but I mean, I guess it's for this, right? It's for this. It's for us.
I'm trying to imagine his character in The Bear as a Jabba the Hutt.
And also, Jabba in the movies didn't speak English, so
yeah, he was just like
yeah. So they just have Jeremy Allen White do that. Oh, I don't know. Please send all your comments in this week in the form of translated into Jabba the Hutt. Please speak it into Japanese or whatever they call it. All right, that's my news story at the end of the episode, Taran.
All right. Well, that's what we have for you then. We will be back next week, and we'll probably start talking about. I mean, not quite yet, but we're stay tuned for like end of the year best of kind of stuff happening. We'll tune into some of these shows and maybe movies and let you know what's worth checking out. And in the meantime, thank you all for joining us. Make sure you subscribe to the We Know Scripted TV feed, podcast, or on YouTube if you want to watch. And anything else, Grace?
Fill out your polls. You have until Friday to fill out your best TV and best movies of the year polls. Josh and I will reveal those at a later date. We have until the end of the week to fill them out. Friday, December 20th.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us here today, and we will see all of you next time.